screen view? Thumbs up? Yes, great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about international mediation certification, but the things I'm talking about today to a large extent really apply to domestic mediation certification as well, because in many ways they both solve similar problems. And so, yeah, I'm going to be talking about why would we certify, how IMI itself works, some of the resources and other criteria which may help you in your mediation journeys, because I understand that many of you are just starting out in some ways, and how to seek further certification as well. So once you move beyond the training stages to as you continue with your career as practitioners. And this is why certification, okay? Because in many jurisdictions around the world, and I understand this is less the case in Canada, but still can be a challenge in some different types of mediation, is that in short, people can just basically put up their sign, put themselves in the yellow pages or online and say, look, I'm a mediator, without having done any mediation training, or perhaps not having done quality mediation training. And this is a problem because it creates that issue of trust, okay? Because users might think, all right, well, maybe I want a mediator to help me in my dispute, but they don't know who has just said they're a mediator and is going on their own good word, right? Or somebody who's actually been trained in that skill set. And so that's why we have certification, to help sort of assure that trust that you're actually retaining a quality mediator who can help you resolve your problem. And so that basis for trust is the primary importance of certification, okay? But at a sort of wider level, it speaks to the professionalization of the industry, okay? Because when you have quality mediators, they start off with, quality training, obviously as with ADR Learning Institute, and then they progress through that career, you start to have a cadre of people who are really fantastically equipped to help solve disputes, which of course leads to better mediation, which leads to better outcomes for the conflict parties. And I mean, maybe this is me being optimistic as well, but I like to think as well, it can lead to a more collaborative society. And the reason I say that, optimism aside, is because at IMI we produced the Global Pound Conference reports. You may have attended or heard of the event in Canada. It's a series running 2016 to 17 in 28 countries around the world. And one of the outcomes of that report, and you can read about it in the North America report, there is a Toronto report as well, is that people who have not done a mediation before, so it sounds a bit pejorative, but low sophistication users, so people who aren't really socialized into the mediation process, have a very different understanding of how to relate to one another and how to conduct business than higher sophistication users, so people who have been socialized in. Differences include, probably predictably, that people who have not been socialized into this process tend to want to beat the other person, and they see a good outcome as winning. Disputes become zero sum, which is obviously not the case for people who understand that, it's not you against me, it's us against the problem. We can work together, create these superior solutions. And so this real change in mindset can lead to a sort of wider changes in terms of how people do business. And certainly I've seen this in my own training of people, and I'm sure Paula can attest to similar things. But another thing that I think is really powerful about this idea of professionalization is that it's a basis for trust for going outside of your social circle. Okay, because I mean, we see it in several countries that when a party or a lawyer says, you know what, we can maybe bring a mediator in here, they tend to look the same, be of a similar gender, have sort of very, very white skewing as well, okay? Because it's about those sort of old boys networks and what have you, and people just don't really know how to branch out. Whereas once you have independent certification, you can say, all right, well, I can trust in the certification. I can look for people who are a little bit different, right? Who will better meet my needs and help me with this solution. So for me, that's another really good benefit to certification. Now, speaking of international certification specifically, which is obviously what we look at IMI, this becomes really important in the context of international and cross-border work. I mean, we have different panels from with people from IMI have been referred to, for example, World Bank, UN, EU type mediations as well, but also sort of in the investor state level. Now, I understand, of course, that Canada is very, very big. Okay, I'm also from a large country. If you haven't heard from my accent, I am Australian. And so sometimes people wonder, well, is this as relevant to me if I'm operating mostly within my country? And I ask people this, I'm like, look, why did you become IMI certified? And I mean, the answer that I've had is that it gives people a local competitive advantage, because not only are they nationally recognized, but they're internationally recognized. Okay, and I've popped down there as well that you can verify your experience in certain specializations, but I'll get onto that a little bit more in a second. But just really back to what IMI is, I know I introduced this a little bit before I started, but I think that was cut off in the recording. So it was founded in 2007 in The Hague, okay, with this vision of professional mediation worldwide, promoting consensus and access to justice. And of course, that access to justice idea speaks to the idea of diversity and inclusion that can come with certification. And these are basically our four missions that we do to achieve this vision. You know, we set standards, and again, I'll talk about that process shortly. We bring together different stakeholders. We do a lot of work to promote understanding and adoption of mediation, working in different forums, whether with governments, whether with national groups, helping to develop the Singapore Convention on cross-border mediation as well. And we also, where we can, try to disseminate skills and training and knowledge, which is part of what the Global Pound Conference series was about. But to the career pathway, okay? So I understand that all of you on this call today are really interested in that quality training through ADR Learning Institute and becoming IMI qualified. And so that is the very, very first step you will take, okay? Because once you're IMI qualified, it shows that you have completed a quality training program. So already you're head and shoulders above some of the others. You then might want to go on and join our Young Mediators Initiative, which is free of charge. And it does make you eligible to join the mentorship framework. And I'll talk a bit about that in a second. You can also start to explore specializations. And by specializations, I mean things like becoming an IMI online mediator, demonstrating you can specialize and you have these top level skills in being an online mediator. And also intercultural competence, which is obviously really important, not just when we're talking about the international sphere, but whenever we're operating in multicultural societies like Canada, you know, like Australia, as there's so many large countries and countries generally around the world. And then once you have that really, really high level of certification and you're one of the best, you become IMI certified. And despite what the image suggests, you don't need to wear a suit, obviously, to reach that level. So IMI certified mediators, that's the international gold standard. It shows that you have been assessed as being a really high skilled, highly experienced, highly knowledgeable mediator or mediation advocate as well. So that's the career pathway. But to get back a little bit to this idea of actually how we develop certifications, because I think it would be a valid question to ask if people were saying, well, where does this come from? Is this just some random organization in The Hague saying, okay, well, this is what it takes to be a mediator, which should obviously be quite problematic from a range of perspectives. So I want to just give you a bit of an illustration of how it's actually done. So the first step is either somebody comes to IMI or the board generates it, or one of our committees generates this idea that, you know what, we can see this new area of mediation that's developing and people need a bit of help, or it needs a bit of credibility, or it needs some kind of competency criteria to separate people who really know what they're doing. So again, this idea of trust, from those who are maybe just, you know, starting or operating differently. And so once that need is identified and approved by a range of committees, as you can imagine, we do a lot of work with committees at IMI. Then we assemble a task force from people all around the world. Okay, so different linguistic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, different positions via the mediation process. So whether they're users or lawyers or mediators or academics, we bring them all together. They produce a draft of competency criteria that goes to the public, comes back for finalization, and then in due course it may be converted to a certification or a specialization. Okay, so IMI qualified or certified or online mediation. And for those of you who had a look at the IMI website before this call, you will have seen we actually just went through this again, and so that we'll now be recognizing online training. And so as part of that, we had the request, to tweak the competency criteria so people knew how to train online, produce the criteria, went to public feedback, implemented and finalized last Friday. Okay, these are the competency criteria we have so far. And the reason I wanted to show these to you is that they can actually be a really useful resource, because as you're developing your skill set as mediators, you can say, well, what does it take to be a good line-on mediator beyond, having done mediation training and having that bit of practice online? And then you can go to the online dispute resolution criteria, and there's a huge list of skills, ideas, knowledge, platforms you might want to consider. So it's actually a really useful resource beyond even the recognition that comes with it. And so, yeah, we've got this criteria for assessment of mediators, mediation advocates who can assist with the process, intercultural competence, and the others I've mentioned. And I'm very much hopeful that we'll soon have an investor state specialization as well. Now, once you're IMI certified, now this is a little bit different for people who are certified or qualified, okay? Now, everyone who's IMI qualified is listed on the website, but they're under verified training instead, because they're not yet at the certified level. And you will also know, if you go to the website, it looks a bit different, because last Thursday we rolled out a new look, so it looks a bit slicker even than here. Okay, but this is what people do when they're looking for a mediator, so a certified mediator, and they can search them by their name or their expertise, their languages, their gender, whether they've signed on to the Green Pledge for Mediators, which I would encourage you to sign on to, and not just because I'm on the facilitators group, but it's a fantastic commitment, and also where they work and what style of mediation. Is it evaluative? Is it transformative? Is it facilitative? So people can really look for a mediator that meets their needs. At the moment, we have mediators all around the world, as you can see. So this includes of our qualified and our certified. So, and yes, we do have some people in the middle of the ocean. There's a couple of islands there. So it's not just a floating ship of mediators in the South Atlantic, although I do like the idea. And so I want to talk a bit about verification as well. And this is what a profile looks like. And the reason Anna's photo is there is not because she's my friend, but because the last time I talked about this, she was in the committee, so I thought I would do that. And so this is the kind of information people see once they sort of find a mediator. They click on their profile, and you'll notice this little feedback digest, okay? Because that is one of the additional guarantees of quality with IMI certification, so the full certification, okay? So not only have they been assessed as highly skilled, knowledgeable, and having that high level experience, but they have an additional independent check. So all these different people they've worked with as conflict parties provide feedback. An independent reviewer goes through that feedback and prepares them with a feedback digest. So that people have this really good basis for making a decision, saying, all right, this is the mediator for me. And for those of you who are becoming IMI qualified, you do have the option of, if you do think you are going to become a professional mediator and continue to build your experience, I would encourage you to upgrade your profile. There's a special option, so you can actually have the feedback digest added to your qualified profile. So you can already start to collect that so that you're ready for certification when it comes. You'll also see for the full certified profiles, you can have introductory videos so people can get a feel for you. I mean, as you're probably gathering from this, we really, really want people to choose IMI certified mediators. We want them to see their profiles, have a feel for them and say, yes, this is the person that we want. And so that's our objective. And you'll also see we actually now have automatic translation into the languages you can see in the bottom left here. So ranging from Spanish to Romanian, so that it's even more accessible for people, but also so that mediators can write their profiles in their own language as well, okay? So it is more worldwide and we're not being totally Anglophonic, even though my language skills are not amazing, but so we're at least making big strides towards inclusivity on that front too. So for those of you who are also interested in other resources, I mean, I already mentioned the Global Pound Conference data and reports, and you'll find that on our website. I think it may be of interest to you to have a look at the Toronto report and sort of see what the snapshot was of the industry at that time, if you weren't in attendance or hadn't heard of it yet. We do have a code of professional conduct, which is currently undergoing reviews to make it even stronger, as well as an assessment process. We have a logbook and a feedback hub, which we designed specifically for early career mediators. Okay, so you can start to track your hours, you can track your CPD or CLE, so continual learning and development, in English, Spanish, or French at this time. Okay, and that can be really helpful if you're in a jurisdiction where they need you to register and prove that, yes, you've been doing the work. Okay, so even beyond IMI, though I want all of you to become IMI certified, it can be a really helpful resource. And it has the feedback hub as well, so that if you're not, for example, affiliated with an organization that collects feedback for you, or even if you are, you can actually send out feedback requests to your conflict parties and they can give you little star ratings and what have you. And so you can continue to progress your career. There's think pieces, there's background information for your users. So if you come across someone who hasn't really used mediation before, you can send them that way, they can read all about it. Links to rules and clauses, role plays, resources. Last year we did a Singapore Convention seminar series, and we can go into the Singapore Convention in the questions, the Q&A, if you would like to have a bit of a, what is this all about, Laura? As well as some listed legislation, although they're limited to the EU and EEA and also the UK, now that that's no longer in the EU at this point, but I'd like to expand that. So just to tell you a bit about how to certify. Okay, and I am drawing to a close, so don't worry if I'm droning on a little bit too much. So once you're qualified, which is, I understand you're already there or nearly there, and you work towards that full certification, it's really easy. Okay, you just check you've got the experience level, you'll find a program, they will assess you, you'll appoint the independent reviewer, fill in your profile, pay your listing contribution or request a waiver, and bam, you are IMI certified and you can join the rest of our wonderful international mediators. These are currently recognized programs in Canada. I decided that ADRLI should have the big logo as the conveners today, but we also recognize FMC and ADRIC. I don't know if it's meant to be said ADRIC or if that's just how I say it. And they both have QAP, so they can both assess people at that higher certified level. Okay. All right, but I mean, again, I sort of said we might want to talk about the Singapore Convention a little bit in the Q&A, but just in brief for those of you who don't know about it, it's about the enforceability, the cross-border enforceability of mediated agreements. So those of you who are going to be working in that more commercial space, this is going to be really, really important for you. And as certification and so in the Singapore Convention itself, basically, if you can say my mediator was dodgy, then you've got a basis for arguing against the enforceability. So certification becomes really, really essential to help defend yourself as well in the era of the Singapore Convention, as well as when you're conducting mediations online. And as I say, we look forward to welcoming you at IMI as IMI qualified, and then later on as you progress your career. I'm sure you know the website. If you don't, feel free to connect with us anyway, or connect with me individually as well. Okay. But I'm going to stop sharing, and I can always post these details in the chat.